The Edmonton Oilers have stringed together a nice run of form, 6-2-0 in their last 8 games, but is their defense really playing that much better? An investigation on today's edition of Locked On Oilers.
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Thursday edition of Locked On Oilers. I am your host, Nick Zararis. I want to thank everyone who's making Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Locked On Oilers, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, where you can enjoy the NFL season with a big return. New customers can place a $5 bet and get started with $150 in bonus bets. If you win your first $5 bet, visit FanDuel.com to get started. On today's show, breaking down the Oilers defense in blocks, 10-game blocks, first 10 games, middle 10 games, and then the last 8 games. The Oilers have played 28 games. So we're going to start with the raw stats, the goals for, goals against, shooting percentage, penalty kill, power play. Then we're going to hit whether or not anything has demonstrably changed other than some luck. And then a bigger, more open-ended conversation about how we can kind of discern what is useful information and what isn't. So at the outset, the Oilers coming into this season had a lot of baggage. And I don't necessarily mean that totally in a negative way. You can have positive baggage. You know, you could have a Louis handbag. You could have nice luggage, nice baggage to bring along with you. But the Oilers definitely had a lot of turmoil in the offseason. You know, roster changes, general manager change, players coming into training camp like Darnell Nurse injured, quite a bit of turnover in that defensive position group, which you could argue was the team's weak point last year to begin with. So there was a lot working against them circumstantially before they ever stepped on the ice. You know, before that first game on opening night against the Jets, well before that, the Oilers definitely had more work to do than some of their other Stanley Cup contemporaries. You know, the Oilers came into this season as the betting favorite to win the Stanley Cup. You know, you had McDavid win the Conn Smythe for playoff MVP on a losing team. First time that happens in 20 some odd years. They reinforced the forward group with Jeff Skinner and Victor Arvidsson. They keep pieces from last year like Adam Henrique. They give raises to Matthias Janmark and Corey Perry. And they say, we're going to figure this out. We think we're close. All we need to do is slight adjustments, and we're going to be in really good shape. But once you got into the games, that first month or so was really rough. You know, the Oilers came out of the gate. They were 4-5-1 in their first 10 games. I wanted to click over to my notes. So we're sitting here now on December 12th, ahead of their game against the Wild tonight. The Oilers are 16-10-2. Their first 10 games, they go 4-5-1 out of the gate. The middle 10, 6-3-1. The last 8 games, 6-2-0. So if we only went by the last 18 games, they went 12-5-1 in those games. The Oilers have played really strong circumstantial and situational hockey, and they've been on the right side of these close games more often than not as of late. But the investigation, the main point of today's episode, I wanted to try and understand what had materially changed for the Oilers, that in their first 10 games to be play so poorly, frankly. You know, what didn't go well in those first 10 games that has since turned around? You know, a lot of people have casually pointed to the goals against coming down and the goals for bumping up. You get a natural regression. You know, regression doesn't necessarily mean a negative thing in terms of like regressing from progress. It can also mean regressing statistically, regressing to the mean. You can positively regress. You know, if you're below average and you regress positively, you can positively regress. So the main point to take away, the starting point of this conversation, the Oilers had a real Murphy's Law run to the start of the season. And it's funny, I went to see Interstellar last night and didn't get out till like 1 a.m. And more than once in that movie, Murphy's Law is brought up. And a lot of people, me included, always think of Murphy's Law as what bad things can happen, do happen. Because I remember I had a teacher in high school who had a slide about that before our first class project. because he said, don't wait till the last minute. You might say, well, I need to print it here. I'm not letting you print it here. You need to come with it printed ahead of time. No ifs, ands, or buts. If you wait till the last minute, something can go wrong. And in a lot of those games, it felt like the Oilers were finding ways to lose. They were blowing leads. They were unable to hold on to them. They were letting poor teams hang around and stay in games long enough that mistakes could ultimately be the difference. But in those first 10 games, the Oilers score 22 goals. They concede 35 in the first 10. So that means the Oilers were averaging 2.2 goals per game through 10 games. The really telling two stats, the key ones for me, in those first 10 games, the Oilers went 4 for 29 on the power play, and they went 18 for 29 on the penalty kill. 63% penalty kill. They conceded 11 penalty kill goals, 1 goal per game, more than 1 goal per game on average on the penalty kill in those first 10 games. Their team PDO, which is luck, which is shooting plus save percentage, was 949, well below. We would say league average PDO is 100. If you are under 100, you are unlucky. If you are over 100, you are lucky. And to be at 949 PDOs through 10 games is unconscionably bad luck. In the middle 10, the Oilers go 6-3-1, 33 goals for, 27 goals against, 5 for 23 on the power play, slowly getting better, 3.3 goals per game, and then 17 of 22 on the PK. Again, that's a lot better than 18 for 29. You take fewer penalties, you have to kill fewer penalties, easier. Their PDO goes from 94.9 up to 99.8. So they are starting to get some bounces. The puck is starting to find the back of the net. You have a 1.1 goals per game increase in a 10-game window. You're going to start getting the puck in the net, and that's positive regression. And then the last 8, 6-2-0, 28 goals for, 18 goals against, 5 for 18 on the power play, so close to a third, and then 17 of 18 on the penalty kill. They're averaging 3.6 goals per game, and their PDO is 102.1. So all of that said, as much as has been made about the Oilers' defense playing better, I firmly believe the Oilers' positive regression, especially on the power play, has been the instrumental force in getting this thing going in the right direction. And yes, the defense does need to be better. But as we have long established here on Locked On Oilers, go listen to any episode in October, any episode in November. I bet more likely than not, you will hear me say the words, don't talk to me about the defense until the offense starts scoring goals, because this defense is not constructed to drive the bus. This is not the 2017 Nashville Predators. This is not a 1-6 with PK Subban and Roman Josi and Ryan Ellis and Matthias Ekholm. That was as deep a defensive group as we have seen in the NHL in the 21st century in the salary cap era. This Oilers defense, it's not that. Ekholm and Bouchard are both really good. I would say Bouchard is as close as you're going to be to world class without being world class. Ekholm is probably the second best defensive defenseman in the entire sport, behind Gustav Forsling of the Panthers. And then once you get past that, it is really inconsistent. And look, I'll be fair. Nurse has been significantly better over the last 15 games than he was in the first 13 games of the season. It is not a coincidence that as Nurse's volatility has settled down, both on the penalty kill, more in particular in the penalty kill, and at 5-on-5, the Oilers have started to play better. I was really pounding the desk pretty aggressively, frankly, that the Oilers should consider splitting up Ekholm and Bouchard to make Nurse's minutes more manageable, so that way you were distributing risk a little bit more evenly throughout your lineup. But the Oilers, to their credit, to Chris Knobloch's credit, they stuck with it. They felt they would be able to figure out what would work. And then in the last 15 games, I want to read this because I want to be accurate. Darnell Nurse at 5-on-5 has been on the ice for 8 goals for, 1 goal against. The Oilers have generated 10.07 expected goals. They've conceded 6.62. They have generated 45 high danger chances. They have conceded 20 in Darnell Nurse's minutes over the last 15 games. That is a exponential improvement from the first 13, 14 games of the season, where it felt like anything that could go wrong in those Nurse minutes had gone wrong. And we are going to talk what the Oilers did personnel-wise to get some better results, and then we'll tackle what it all means coming up next. We are all driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree. Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. The thing I like about Indeed is that it leverages over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day. Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/locked-on. Just go to Indeed.com/locked-on right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/locked-on. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, where you can tackle NFL action at America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. Tonight, if you're not watching the Oilers, the Rams and the Niners in a do-or-die game in the NFC West, the Niners 2.5-point favorites, and then potential game of the year Sunday afternoon in Detroit, where Josh Allen and the front runner for the MVP, Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills, are heading to Detroit to take on the Super Bowl favorite Detroit Lions, where the Lions are 2.5-point favorites, both high-powered offenses. You can get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook of the NFL. Thank you to everyone who is hanging out here on this Thursday pre-game edition of Locked On Oilers, where we are trying to diagnose the improvement in the Oilers. And if you're not somebody who can watch every single game, there are certain components of a turnaround you might not necessarily pick up on because they're really subtle. And some of it is luck. As much as we want to think life isn't random circumstances compounding together, there is an element of randomness to life, and that transcends, competitiveness. As much as we want to think the best players make the best plays, and that's what wins, that's what makes the best teams the best, life does have an element of variance to it. When you think about the results, especially on the power play, where the game is in its most volatile state because it is the easiest to create offense, it's not really that surprising to see such a dramatic swing where a team could go from conceding 11 penalty kill goals in 10 games to going 17 for 18 in a chunk of 8 games. And look, I understand that in a 3-game span, you probably take another 2 or 3 penalties, and we don't know what those numbers are going to look like after tonight against Florida, etc. Against Vegas, then Florida, want to be right. When you add all that up, you don't know how the next few games are going to go. But I feel very confident in saying it never seemed like the Oilers were that bad from a talent perspective. It more so seemed that things just weren't going right. And the reason I say that, I'm going to click back over to my stats sheet here. The Oilers' numbers in terms of their underlying numbers, so their scoring chances, their expected goals, their high danger chances, all of those numbers in the last 8 games, hell, even the last 18 games, are relatively close to what they were in the first 10 games. And some of the numbers in the first 10 games are a bit more inflated in terms of the rate because there was more. Because the Oilers were trailing in a lot of those games and trailing for good chunks of those games. They conceded the first goal a lot in those early games. And when you're behind, the other team is going to be more willing to cede possession. We talked about this on yesterday's show. You might have saw the short or the clip on TikTok or Instagram, but there is a connectedness. Game state matters more in hockey than it does in any other sport in terms of score impacts. When a team is trailing, they are going to push a lot harder to create offense. And naturally, the other team is going to allow them to take lower quality chances in their desperation. And because of that, it creates a self-fulfilling cycle where the Oilers have great underlying numbers those first 10 games. They have 54% of the scoring chances, 58% of the scoring chances. They generate 72 scoring chances per 60 minutes at 5-on-5, while only conceding 52.41. The issue, they only score 1.69 goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5, while conceding 2.54. If you look at the expected goals, they created 3.16 expected goals per 60 at 5-on-5, and they were scoring almost half of that in actuality. Then you look at the high danger chances, 13.19 per 60 in those first 10 games. In comparison, they are generating fewer scoring chances per 60 in the last 8 games. They are conceding 1 more scoring chance per 60. They are scoring 0.8 more goals per game. They are conceding 0.2 less goals per game. They are creating 0.9 less expected goals per game. They are conceding 0.24 less expected goals against. They are creating 3 fewer high danger chances per 60, and they are conceding 0.7 less high danger chances. So what all that means is the bulk of the Oilers' issues in that first 10-game window and why it feels so dramatically different now, even though the underlying results aren't all that different. Number one, special teams. The Oilers' power play and penalty kill in those first 10 games was miserable. To reiterate, in those first 10 games, the Oilers went 4 for 29 on the power play. Almost 1/6 of their opportunities they were able to convert into a power play. This is a team that has consistently flirted with a 30% conversion rate on the power play. And then the 63% penalty kill. There is not a hockey team on God's green earth in the history of hockey that would be able to win consistently with a penalty kill that bad. You could take the 1990, you take the 2004 Canadian Olympic team, you take whatever team you want, the 96 USA World Cup of Hockey, whatever team you want to take from the annals of history, international or NHL, none of those teams is going to be able to be successful on a consistent basis if you are conceding on the conceding on the penalty kill 40% of the time. That's just, you can't do that. It's not a conceivable path to victory. And that's why the underlying results are interesting and why they're so telling, because we can go into these numbers and we can see, well, they're generating about the same amount of offense. They're conceding about the same amount of defense. Even at 5-on-5, what's different? Special teams, biggest culprit, 100%. Remember, we talked about our pyramid of ideas of the foundation of success is McDavid and Draisaitl. Then special teams. Special teams are an essential component to the Oilers' success because it is where their best players have the most opportunity to impact the game because they have more opportunities to, because there's more space, there's fewer players on the ice for the other team. You have about, I believe, if I remember correctly, a 40-something% chance, greater chance of scoring a goal on the power play than you do at 5-on-5. And when you're not doing that, and that is an essential component to your formula for scoring enough goals to win, of course you're going to have issues. And that's why it's going to seem like the defense is getting killed, because you need every last goal. And when you have no margin for error, it becomes a lot more pronounced when not a strength of your team has to become a focal point. We're going to take one last break on today's show. We come back, we're going to try and unpack this from a big picture, try and determine what it all means going forward. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at PrizePicks. Make your holidays bigger and brighter with PrizePicks, the best place to get real money action while watching your favorite sports. You can win up to 1,000 times your money on PrizePicks. PrizePicks now offers MasterCard for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. Join now because this holiday season, PrizePicks is giving away 2 free picks in December, and they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Picksmas. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus, guaranteed. PrizePicks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday each and every Tuesday. If you think Connor McDavid's going to have more than half a goal tonight against the Wild, if Philip Gustafsson is going to have more than 24 and a half saves against the Oilers, or if Evan Bouchard's going to have more than 3.5 shots on goal, all of that and more over at PrizePicks. So download the app and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Remember, download the app and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. Run your game. Thank you to everyone who is hanging out here on this Thursday edition of Locked On Oilers ahead of the showdown with the Minnesota Wild. It'd be awfully nice if the Oilers could get their lick back tonight. Minnesota's good. Philip Gustafsson is playing some of the best hockey of any goalie in the entire league right now, and they have some of the most high-flying talent in the entire league. You think about Matt Boldy and Kirill Kaprizov and Marco Rossi and Brock Faber. This is one of the really talented young groups that the Oilers are going to have to compete with going forward. You know, this is the last season of the Zach Parise and Ryan Suter cap recapture penalties from buying out those players. This is a team that's going to have financial flexibility. Of course, they do have to sign Kaprizov to a long-term extension, but the opportunity to improve their roster is on the horizon, and it is something the Oilers are going to have to contend with, considering how old the Oilers are in relation to some of their other contemporaries. So, as far as what you can take away from the first 2.5 months and change of this season for the Oilers, those first 10 games are about as close as you're going to get to worst case scenario, struggling to score on a team that has two players who are locks for 100 points, one that had a player who had 50 goals last year, somebody who had 100 points 2 years ago. When you have all of that, you have Jeff Skinner who can score 25, 30 goals, you know, Arvidsson, who's been a consistent 50, 60 point guy in his NHL career. If you're only scoring 2.2 goals per game with all of that going on, with all of that talent, that tells me something's not working. And the Oilers, to their credit, have stayed the course. On the back end, they've really tried to figure out what the baseline is, and they've figured out, you know, we're going to play certain guys a little bit more and certain guys a little bit less. If you look at the numbers, the first 10 games, Evan Bouchard's playing 24 minutes a night. The last 8, 22. If you look at Matthias Ekholm, he's playing about 30 seconds more from the first 10 games over the last 8. Darnell Nurse is up almost a full minute and a minute and 10 seconds over what he played his first 10 games over the last 8. Brett Kulak is up almost 3 full minutes per game in the last 8 over the first 10. Troy Stetcher's playing a full minute less. Ty Emerson is playing about 40 seconds more. The Oilers have tried, and to their credit, have found defensive usage rates that are functioning. The defense is functioning well enough that they can create more offensively. And some of the offensive creation is just positive regression. You know, Hyman was shooting like 3%. Skinner was shooting something like 3 or 4%. And those guys are both a lot better than that. You know, even if Hyman has a slight regression, he's not going from 13% to 4% in one season, one summer. He's good. He's better. And the Oilers, as they start building this out, you know, the win over Tampa Bay is a good sign. Playing the way they did against Vegas last weekend, good sign. Not last weekend, last week, excuse me. If you can continue to make incremental progress, that is how you set yourself up to go on a long and deep run come April, May, God willing, June. This team has work to be done. I still don't feel particularly comfortable about the defense relying so much on Troy Stecher and Ty Emberson, but to those guys' credit, they are making this work. They have continued to find ways to survive. The Oilers definitely need one more defenseman so I could feel good about this group, but I think I can put my hand up and say, to take some accountability, I wasn't entirely on the ball about where the Oilers' issues were in those first 10 games. And yes, I am a proponent in believing in the underlying numbers, that if you consistently create offense, eventually it's going to start to happen for you. And the Oilers, a lot of their issues were power play related. They just couldn't find it. They were struggling, 6 for 30, 5 for 30 in their first 10 games. That's a really poor rate to only be scoring 2.2 goals per game when you are this talented of a group. That's eye-opening. And look, none of this is set in stone. There are still a lot of games on the horizon that the Oilers need to play. I am not saying the Oilers have solved all their issues. I'm not saying they won't pop up again. What I am saying is they have shown the capacity to solve their problems. And even if different problems arise down the back half of this season, and we're not even at the halfway point, frankly, we still got a ways to go till Four Nations, which is about the halfway point, and things will pop up. Injuries will happen. Ruts will happen. Cold streaks will happen. But being that the Oilers have shown the capacity last season and this season to solve their issues in-house with coaching, lineup management, when you add all of that up, it makes you feel a degree of confidence that there is problem-solving capability here. And in the playoffs, against great opponents, you have to be quick on your feet as far as you're thinking. You have to be able to cook up solutions on a moment's notice. If a pair or a line isn't working, let's break it up. If a player is struggling, let's shorten his shifts. Let's get him out there more infrequently. Let's get him out there against lower quality competition. If we can do that to get him going, if we can get him some offensive zone faceoffs, there are tricks. Every coach, every general manager has tricks in their toolbox as far as coaxing better play out of its players. That's one of the real components and signs of a good team is that they are constantly looking for ways to improve, to tinker, as opposed to being complacent with relative success. Because, of course, regular season success is all relative. Sure, you expect to make the playoffs, win a series or two, but no one's going to be complacent or happy if the Oilers burn out in the second round or the conference finals. That after last year, that's a setback and that's a high bar. But the Oilers are good enough where that should be the bar. Of course, you want to appreciate the moments because it's been a long time coming for the Oilers to be this consistently good again. But you've earned this. We've earned this. This team is good. It's going to continue to get better. I strongly believe that with a deadline addition or two, this team can be every bit as good as last year's team, if not, frankly, better, because I think the Oilers have the capability of getting more out of some of the guys who are here right now already, who were on the team last year and have the capacity to play at a higher level. Where is the performance not commensurate with historical trends, and why isn't it? Is it shooting less? Is it shooting percentage? And a lot of the Oilers' issues in those first 10 games, that was shooting percentage. That was save percentage. But in the last 8, we've swung all the way around. We went from 7% unlucky to 2% lucky. It all evens out. Water finds its level. I will talk to you guys tonight after the game against the Wild, hopefully after an Oilers win. Talk to you guys then. Until then, let's go Oilers.